What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. We've got a lot. It's the day before the trade deadline, and we've already had our first monster trade of the season, I guess. And it's more than no superstars, but Finn Capella moving is certainly a big deal, and it definitely affects things tonight as well as other stuff going on. I think that also we've got to keep our ear to the grindstone, ear to the ground, whatever you say, just because there's going to be other news, I think, and you've still got two guys who are very good plays tonight, or considered very good plays, that are potentially going to be traded. In fact, they were supposed to be traded in combo for each other, but the Robert Covington moving is probably going to affect that.
What, you're talking about Russell and Wiggins?
Russell and Wiggins.
Okay.
So I think that this slate is really going to come down to, like, it's going to force you to stars and scrubs. Now, I really would have given anything for this slate last night because my feelings on yesterday's show was I wanted to lock in, or not lock in, but basically in the majority of all my high-end lineups, I think in 4 out of 5 on DraftKings, in 3 out of 5 on DraftKings, and one of one on FanDuel. I had Harden and Giannis together. I loved that pairing, and I was trying to reach desperately for value, and I didn't find the right value. So tonight, I did find it a little bit with Wesley Matthews, by the way. I found him a little bit, but not enough of the other right guys. I found a little too much Drew Holiday as well. But tonight, we've got some insane value. So, Sheets, I'm going to start off this by asking, of all this value, because I've got a strong take on what I feel the most comfortable with, what are you currently the most comfortable with? What are you feeling like you might have to plug in?
So the first thing, just to expand on what you said before, about it being a stars and scrubs type build, the issue is that there's I don't know what stars. I mean, in other words, there's no Harden, there's no Giannis, there's no LeBron, right? So the stars we're talking about are not like the 12K, 11K stars. They're more the, how many of the Trae Youngs you can get in, how many of the Cats you can get in, and stuff like that. So it's a little different, and I think that obviously the key to this slate is, from a value perspective, is going to be figuring out what goes on in that Minnesota game, because they traded their whole bench away, and a starter, I guess. So we're gonna have to figure that out. And fortunately, Bobby told me beforehand that he figured it out already. So I don't have to worry about it.
No, I didn't say that. I said I've got some ideas.
I'm just kidding.
Let's put it that way.
So I also think that there's going to be some plays strewn throughout the course of this slate that are similar plays. We're gonna go back to guys that maybe we played over the last couple of days. One of them I'm kind of waiting on a little later on in the review. It could be really, really low owned guy, and some guys will be kind of chalky. But I don't know. I kind of like this slate a little bit. And you just came in with the with the Boston news, which shook things up a little bit. But the good thing about the Boston stuff is that pretty clear where to go, when these guys are out with Boston. So I'm kind of content with where I want to go for in that game. So
I just want to point out, though, the problem with the Boston stuff too. You have a very tough defensive matchup, and it's not like you're getting. So these guys could play well and not crush their value. Now, probably one of them does, but they're not cheap on DraftKings. I mean, you can make a decision to we can talk about it, but potentially fade some of that value.
I actually only like 2 guys from Boston, and it might not be the same 2 that other people.
Interesting. Okay.
We'll see. All right. So I guess we could just start off with what's first on the list here. Phoenix. You have Phoenix, Detroit first?
Let's do it.
All right. So Phoenix, Detroit first. All right. First of all, on the Phoenix side, I like the same 2 guys that I usually like, and that's DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker. I think they're both rated to be the best plays. And as far as ownership goes, they don't. Again, a lot of this is gonna change with whatever value kind of opens up and who announced starting in certain games. But these 2 guys are both relatively modest. I mean, you get somewhere between 10 and 15% on these guys. I think that makes a lot of sense. And in a close spread, I don't have to worry about minutes too much with these guys. So these guys make a lot of sense to me. I don't really like anybody else over there. And on the Detroit side, I really think that we have to go back to the same guard value that we kind of struggled with the other day, that being Reggie Jackson and Bruce Brown. Now, Bruce Brown, they certainly upped his price from $3,800 to $4,900, but all that is a reference to is that the fact that $3,800 was kind of ridiculous given what was going to happen in that game anyway. So I do think that Reggie Jackson and Bruce Brown both rate to be really, really good values. And once again, Reggie Jackson is going to be probably the better play and the most owned. But I think that the two of them look really, really good today for the same reasons. I mean, Derrick Rose is out, and I think that they're going to get the ball a lot, and I think that they're going to be really good plays. And if they're not super chalk, I have no problem playing them. As a matter of fact, just right off the bat, I mean, you could want to play Booker with a couple of these Detroit guys. You want to play Ayton with a couple of these Detroit guys. I have no problem with that. And then also Drummond. Now, again, you have to worry about trade risk and whatever else is going on with Drummond. And you could touch on how trade risk affects these things. But certainly looks to be a good play. I mean, there's no way Ayton can guard him. So
it's certainly good to have the first game of the night. You know what I mean? Because what will happen is even if someone's traded, it's not like you're necessarily going to see them.
Right.
They could be dressed, ready to go for a half hour before the game. And we'll hear that somehow they've been, something happened or whatever. If it's this early, I'm not as worried about the trade risk as I am for some of the games that start even just an hour later.
Yeah, so I think those three main Detroit guys, those two main Phoenix guys, and I think all of them are actually really good plays. And they're all going to be not all going to be moderately owned. I think Reggie Jackson is going to be forced to take up a lot of ownership as he probably should. But I think there's going to be no super chalk in this game, and I think you can play any of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so starting with Phoenix, which makes it a little bit tougher for me. So I'm just looking real quickly at the last centers up against Andre Drummond and what their stat lines have been, and it's pretty remarkable. Jared Allen, I think, put up, what did he put up, 50-something? Then you got, we lost Gasol in the game, so you got 30 only out of Ibaka. But then you've got against Denver, Jokic put up 80. And then you got Memphis, and I think that, what did he put up, 60, Valanciunas or whatever? He put up a monster game, whatever it was. That's what's been happening to Drummond recently. And let's throw back to what happened when Drummond got sat in that one game when they were playing now there's no way Drummond's getting sat tonight unless he gets traded.
Right.
You're not going to do that to someone right before the trade deadline, but he was getting so badly outplayed by Jahlil Okafor that's where we were at with Drummond, and he was still putting up numbers. So I sort of like the idea of I don't mind a Drummond and Ayton lineup together.
Ooh, that's interesting.
I think that's really an interesting way to go. I think Drummond's going to be very popular, and I would throw in Reggie Jackson. I think in this whole game, Reggie Jackson is my favorite play, and it's not close. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. I'm going to bet on a guy not shooting 1 for 16 again, and he's
no. That was. Let me tell you, that was an impossible spot for him. I mean, he was coming back from an injury, and that's why I was fading him in that game as chalk, because he was he was coming off the injury, coming off a back-to-back on an overtime game where he played the whole overtime, and he was questionable all day long. I mean, right up until the game, I wasn't even sure if he was going to play. So I'm really surprised he didn't play in the game. So I'm willing to throw that game out, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah, and I mean, look, he was 1 for 16. Even he took 16 shots in 24 minutes. So yeah. What does that tell you? Without Rose, without these other guys, you don't have a whole lot of other guys to take offensive shots. I mean, Sekou Demboya, I would have made an argument if he was still 3K today that he's a solid play. Probably can't go there at 4K. But he was 2 for 15 also. Like, he was another guy that took a bunch of shots in that game. So you need the wings. You got to know that's going to go somewhere. If this was a bigger slate, I think I would be very into Langston Galloway. I'm sorry, if it was a smaller slate. I just don't think it's the right slate for it. I think you mostly want to stick with your Brown and your Reggie Jackson and play some Drummond. I don't know how much I'm going to end up getting to Drummond, because the other spend-ups that I really like, I'll just say it right now, Trae Young and Cat in the same game, especially an easily stackable game, I kind of prefer those guys to playing for Drummond, but maybe I can get Drummond in also. So sort of looking at that. And then on the, again, on the Phoenix side, I love always playing Booker. If I was playing more lineups, my daughter has a basketball game, so I'm not going to play as many lineups tonight. But I would be playing Devin Booker all over the place, and or not all over. I would be playing him 20-ish% or 25% or somewhere in that range. I don't know if he'll make my main lineups today, but I do think he's a fine play. And I feel that way sort of about everybody on the Phoenix side. I think that with this price on Rubio, I know we've talked about it before, and he's been so awful. It's just you sort of have to, at some point, he's going to break a slate with net at zero ownership. And this is the kind of thing where if I was mass multi-entering, he would certainly be a part of it. But I don't think you can argue for him on a very only playing limited lineups when there's so many other plays on the slate like today. The other guy is Mikal Bridges. The minutes are just seemingly there. Like I don't know how much you'll get to these guys because of this slate, but they're all in play. But really, I think you're focusing on Booker, Ayton on the Phoenix side if you're playing anyone, and then on the Detroit side, you're playing Reggie Jackson above everyone else, followed by Drummond and then Brown for me.
I mean, not to pile on your list of people that smashed against Andre Drummond, but I think you go one game back from even when you were tracing back. We had the Tristan Thompson 62-point game also.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was the other one.
Yeah. so yeah, he's definitely not been motivated to play any defense. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Going up and how they're not just that they're playing faster. It's just that their defense is just terrible.
Yep. Okay, so Indiana, Toronto. I don't like anybody from Indiana. I would be remiss not to point out that Oladipo's minutes limit has been increased to 28. So, take that for what it's worth. It's just not for me. And on Toronto, I just think I'm going to find better plays than all these guys. I mean, you want to make a case for your normal guys on Toronto like Serge, Siakam, Lowry, and Van Fleet, fine. But I just think I'm going to be able to find better plays than this today. So I'm willing to spend 10 seconds on this game.
Yeah, I would just point out that Sabonis continues to be too cheap on FanDuel, and no one's playing him over there in general. So, people are sort of assuming that Oladipo somehow is going to take away from all of his usage. That's not the case. So don't worry about Sabonis is my first thought. But I'm not going to play him on DraftKings. I do think that Oladipo at least needs to be considered. At 5.3, I think an 8X is very possible here, even in a tough matchup. He took 17 shots the other day. In fact, he's been pretty aggressive the whole time since he's been back. He's shot the ball just absolutely awful. What is he now? 8 for 8 for 39 since he got back. That's not going to continue either. He's not going to go one. He's 3 for 21 from 3-point range. Like I'm gonna bet on guys with talent at 28 minutes. I think it's enough time. I don't think I want to get heavy because there's too many plays on the slate and it's not a great matchup. But I do think he's certainly worth considering. I don't know how much of him I'll end up with, but he is a guy. If I'm stuck at 5.3, I don't mind using. And I don't even mind using him as part of a little. This game has a higher total than you think. Toronto's been playing faster, and the pricing of Siakam and Lowry and Ibaka on the other side make it tempting to want to try and give it a little bit of a mini stack with Oladipo on the other side for me. But mostly, again, giant slate, probably going to look elsewhere, but just wanted to mention it because I don't think that it wouldn't surprise me if something like this not necessarily won a tournament, but certainly helped you win a tournament with Ibaka and Lowry or Lowry and Siakam running it back on the other side. And I actually don't even mind playing, to be honest, Ibaka and Siakam together if you wanted to do a stack and then throwing Oladipo on the other side. But yeah, there are better games on the slate. It's just the pricing makes it a little bit tempting.
I wonder where the chalks end up being on the slate. I think it's going to be pretty spread out. Do you want to know the truth? I mean,
there'll be 4 pretty popular spots, I think.
I mean, I think people end up, because you can afford them. I think people try to get to Cat. I think people try to get to obviously I think Porzingis will end up being really popular again for good reason. Yeah. I'm just curious. I mean, I'm just wondering. I don't think that maybe. I mean, I'm looking at Culver being really popular, and I guess he could be, but I don't think he's going to be as popular as that. I think the value is going to be spread out a little more. I think if you tell me right now, I would think that someone like Reggie Jackson would end up being more popular than Culver, just because of the uncertainty of what could happen in Minnesota. But again, we'll get to Minnesota in a minute, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So let's do Golden State Brooklyn first. And as we alluded to earlier, if you gave me odds going into yesterday that D'Angelo Russell would be playing this game, I would think he'd be a really, really big underdog, just because there was so many trade rumors regarding him that they thought he was locked down to be traded to Minnesota, I think, and then Golden State said, sorry, I mean, we're just not giving, you're not giving us enough, or Minnesota saying we're not giving you as much as you think he's worth or whatever, and that all kind of collapsed. I'd have to think he's probably still in trade play from now on, till the end of the day. But, I will say that if he does in fact play, he is going back to Brooklyn, and I certainly think that if you want a lower owned guy who's not going to project all as well as some of these other players, he's certainly someone you can play. Because like for me, I don't really like anybody else on the Golden State side. Like he'd be my only one. But on the Brooklyn side, I mean, for me, it's kind of easy. So I actually ate the LeVert chalk the other day. I thought he was kind of a lock, given that he was starting finally, and he didn't disappoint. And if these ownership levels are even remotely close, I think he's just as good a play here again. I mean, I think that if he's going to continue to start, I think he's, I feel really bad for what happened to this guy. He had that terrible, terrible injury last year, kind of came back, and this year slow coming back. It seemed like his minutes were capped. He obviously has a lot of talent. And while Kyrie is out, it gives him a really good chance to kind of shine. Dinwiddie's fine, you know what I mean? But I would go right back to LeVert as my favorite play from the Nets. And what's his name would be my second favorite would be Spencer Dinwiddie. But I'm going to probably if I play 10 lineups, I'll probably have LeVert in all of them. And I think that one of them is probably going to end up with D'Angelo Russell.
Well, first of all, I definitely think that if we get like somehow some sort of confirmation or feeling that D'Angelo is going to play, I think he becomes like he's a phenomenal tournament play. Like,
yeah,
this is a guy who can light it up. And the weird thing is this other team, like he gets along great with the Nets. Like they're all like friends and stuff. But I get to think that if they'd be playing against each other, that he'd be aggressive. I always hated playing D'Angelo Russell before because he never gets to the free throw line. He's been better this year. But guys you want to pay this kind of price for, it's always hard to justify. But this is the kind of game where I could see him really chucking. I think it becomes very interesting if somehow something does happen with him today, because I don't know that you need to jump to anybody else on this Golden State side, which feels kind of weird, I guess. I don't know. I think that it would be just Russell on the Golden State side for me, and then I don't mind the LeVert play on the other side, but I certainly don't think I'm locking him in. I do like that you are. I think it's a bold take. I am curious to see how the minutes go exactly with him. I'm hoping they give him back. And you're right. I mean, you could be getting a guy who's like a 7K guy for 5,700 and in a good matchup. So I'm with you on here.
Okay. You like any of these other Brooklyn guys? Like any of these wings or anybody like that, or no?
I mean,
not for me. I mean, I'm just.
It just feels wrong to play any of them on this slate.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so Orlando, Boston. So Boston has everybody out as usual. So we're first of all on the Boston side. So so to review, we have Tice out. We have, I'm presuming out. Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker. Did you say Jaylen Brown also? No,
just Kemba Walker.
That's good enough, right? So for me, my two favorites on the Boston side, and I guess they're both going to be popular, is Jason Tatum for all the reasons we always describe about why Jason Tatum's a good play when these guys are out. And specifically, Bobby gave a really good explanation a couple of games ago where Kemba being out is a pretty decent-sized boost for Tatum as well. And which a lot of people might not think about, which is very, very true. So he'd been my best play. And my second favorite play is going to be Enes Kanter with if I'm presuming Tice out. I mean, at 4,200 against Vooch, I mean, they're going to, not that he's a great defensive guy, whatever, but could use him on the court and he could get extra minutes. And he every once in a while, puts up a good game. So those would be my two favorite guys. More so than the other guys, more so than Jaylen Brown, and more so than Gordon Hayward. And on Orlando, again, I don't know if I need to on this slate. I don't know if I need to play Vooch at 8,400 when I can play Ayton at a similar price. But Vooch, I guess, is fine. But I think I'd rather go someone like Ayton.
I get it. I think that if I was gonna run two Celtics, I might run it back with Vooch because I do like him here against Kanter quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think he'll smash. I think that Kanter could easily have a game too. And he's so cheap. There's obviously upside for the minutes. They really don't have other size to match up with a guy as big and as skilled as Vooch. But they also, like, we've seen similar situations, and we just don't really see Cantor ever get over that 24-minute mark. However, I think that this could be a little bit different, unless they're going to play Vincent Poyer or whatever his name, however you pronounce his name. I just don't see how like Grant Williams can match up with him. I don't think they put Tatum on him. I guess they could kind of put Tatum on him. Tatum's a pretty good defender in long, but it's just he's not. It's just I just see Vooch as beating these guys up. So I do have some interest in Vooch, and I have interest in Cantor. I definitely, even with all the other value, I do think that Cantor is just at 4.2 is a guy who just completely smash in this spot. Even though it's not like a good matchup or anything, it sort of is a good matchup because he's going to have to be on the court at least for some. He might even end up fouling out, which would be my. I always say I want to play the guys who are going to foul out because they'll be on the court at least.
Yep.
The guy who gets overlooked, I mean, they're all going to get overlooked even with those other guys out. I think you'll see them owned on FanDuel, but not Draftkings. But I don't mind taking a shot on all of the three big names, Hayward, Tatum, and Brown. Right now, I'm giving the edge to Tatum. But it's I could see it going towards. I mean, Hayward, they do run a lot of offense through him, so I don't feel very excited about it though. I thought I would be more wanting to jump on this game, and I just think there's other spots on the slate that are probably better.
Are those guys still going to? Are those two guys still 6,300 small forwards on FanDuel?
6,800 for Hayward, 6,600 for Brown. Tatum is he's more expensive. He's 7,900 at power forward.
Okay. All right, we'll talk about that in the next video, I guess. All right, so all right, moving on. Atlanta, Minnesota. So Minnesota, completed a pretty big trade. They got rid of Covington, among others, and it's just kind of a mess in a way. And there's also variance with respect to Wiggins, as you were alluding to before, whether he plays or not, whether he gets traded or not. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like literally 8 guys right here in my player pool from Minnesota that I have to consider. So I'll let you separate them for me. But obviously the easiest one is Cat, playing against Atlanta with a natural run back with Trae Young with other value that you can use to make it work. It certainly seems to make a lot of sense. The highest owned value guy for now is Culver, but again, I just have to see who's starting. I just have to see how things kind of shake out. Then there's a Kogi. Then you have these 2 other guys that you don't know if they're going to play the 4. Maybe Naz Reid or Gorgie Jang. Maybe he plays a little bit alongside of Cat today. I really don't know. Or maybe Kalen Martin's the guy that gets those minutes. It's going to be tough to figure out. I'll kind of defer to you at least for a little while on that one. And on the Atlanta side, Trae Young against Minnesota. Let's try it. He would be my main guy in Atlanta. Well, obviously, I don't know if I'm going to get to the others. I don't know if I'm going to get to Collins. I don't know if I'm going to get to Herter. I think I'm going to be Mr. Obvious and play Trae with Cat or play Trae with some cheaper Minnesota guys. And as obvious as that is, it doesn't look like Trae's going to be that popular, but it's got to be. I just think he has to be. But in any case, what do you think about this whole situation?
So basically, usually I like to start with the other team, but I'll start with Minnesota, the home team this time. Yeah, it's going to be hard to not at least take shots on basically almost all of this value, with the exception maybe of Jalen Noel. I think that if you're mass multi-entering, you want to be ahead of the field in case on McLaughlin, Martin, Reed, and Jang. Well, Reed and Jang, I don't know if you want to be the head of the field, but you want to get a little bit of exposure. I still don't necessarily know that they'll need to play 2 bigs there, but they're limited on bodies. And I personally am of the, I don't really want to I might throw Wiggins into one lineup or something, but I don't think so. Like, I think I'm just going to lean Cat, Culver, Okogie, and then we'll play mixes of the other guys. I just feel like those guys are probably going to get around 30 minutes in this spot. And that's good enough for me against Atlanta and basically for anyone. They're cheap. I feel like there's upside. I don't feel particularly like there's a ton of downside. The issue you're going to run into is some ownership. But Okogie's probably going to get less ownership than Culver. They could play Keelan Martin more minutes. It does make me nervous to play Okogie for that reason a little bit. But I think that I'm still erring on that side of things. I just don't see why they wouldn't let Culver go. You know what I mean? Like, why not let him play here? Finally, there's really no other true point guard except for Jordan McLaughlin, who it does worry me a little bit, like that he could get in there, but so you can throw him into a lineup or two. But mostly it's going to be Cat heavy, Culver heavy, a little less heavy on Koji, but still pretty heavy. And then it's going to be a mix of all the other guys at lower ownership. I mean, I'll have less ownership of, but in Jang, Reed, Martin, McLaughlin, maybe even Wiggins.
Here's an interesting question before you go on to Atlanta. So you're playing DFS and it's getting like half hour before lock or whatever it is, and they announce starters. Okay, how are you not ranking, but how are you weighing the importance of some of these guys starting versus some of these guys coming off the bench? Because I think that there's certainly a great amount of variance. Look, I think if Wiggins isn't traded, he's starting, obviously, right? So you have Cat and Wiggins are probably definitely starting. But whatever, like if they announced that, say, I don't know, Naz Reid is coming off the bench, does that make him less appealing to you? If his ownership gets affected and you could play him at lower ownership, does that? I mean, how would the fact of in this particular game someone starting really impact him?
So I'm a little bit surprised at the minutes projections for both Naz Reid and Gorgui Dieng. I don't know why you necessarily need to have – I mean, I understand that Atlanta plays fairly big mostly, but it's not like these big guys are guys you're going to have to match up with. So it seems weird to me to have the projections quite as high as they are on those two. So I actually would factor in starting a lot for both Dieng and Reid. Okay. If Martin or McLaughlin were starting, I would certainly – that would give them a giant boost in my eyes. I still think I would take shots on Culver and Koji, especially Culver, but I don't see why they would move Koji out of the starting lineup.
Right.
So that would be just a kind of a weird thing. And then, we've got to remember one other thing, that if we're going to get into stacking, maybe not to play more than 3, although it is a supreme matchup, so maybe you can go 4. But it's not quite like the Houston situation. It's close, but there's not 7 bodies they're going to play. There's 9. Right. There's 9. As of now, if Wiggins is out, that's a whole different story, and then the ownership shifts. But then you can legitimately play 5 of those guys if Wiggins is in fact out, because the price is just makes no sense. You have nobody else below 4K on the team other than above 4K other than Wiggins and Towns. So it just makes the game. It makes you want to stack it. Yes, it's going to be on the chalkier side, and I do think waiting for starting lineups is a really smart way to go there. I really like Trae Young on the other side. I think that Collins is a terrific tournament pivot off of what's going to be a very chalky Kristaps. But I don't love paying this price for him, especially someone who can get as much foul trouble as he can. We know he has a ceiling, but we haven't really seen it in a while. I don't know. It doesn't feel ideal to me. There's no Vince Carter connection to Minnesota, but like when he was back in Dallas, they played him more minutes for his last game there. It's his last game there. I'm not going to play him. I'm just sort of I'm just sort of more mentioning that one so we can remember going forward that there's going to be a time where we want to play Vince Carter, but it's not going to be tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. We got to stay on the Vince Carter watch, especially getting to the second part of the year where it's going to be his last game in certain places.
Right. And by the way, if Bruno Fernando is out again, I would definitely consider playing Damian Jones.
They're going to need somebody to guard him, right?
They need somebody. And look, I know he was terrible against Boston, but they didn't need him in that game. The other 2 previous games against Dallas and Philly, he put up 30 and 29. Now, maybe it's not the right slate, probably not, but it's just mentioning it. Also, they'd be shorter on bodies a little bit, so it would I think it just makes everybody just a little bit more appealing because the minutes would just feel so much more secure.
All right, sounds good. Again, I would, in summary for this game, I would watch. You got to watch for everything, obviously, but make sure that I would make sure to play someone that's starting, and that would just be me. I mean, I don't know. I don't
know if you can win tonight. Sounds crazy, but without someone from this game, and I honestly kind of felt that way a little bit before even losing Covington and all that.
Yeah, I mean, you got you know, you hit the nail right on the head. Just look at this, the salaries. You know, you have only 2 guys that are above 4K, and yeah, they're the 2 highest usage guys on the team, right? But you can't pick up 70% of the fantasy points between 2 guys. You know what I mean? It doesn't work that way. I mean, just people are going to get assists, people are going to get rebounds, going to fall, and then people are going to get shots. And
we saw it tonight. Harden got 80, but still, you know, everybody else was 40, 45, 30. There was plenty of other stuff to go around.
Yep. And God forbid this game, you know, blows out one way or the other, and Cat sits for a decent amount of time. I mean, then all these guys get 10x. You know what I mean? Like look, if you're scripting, I would really make sure that you get a couple. I don't. That's not necessarily 2, but maybe 2 from this game. I'm not. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. I think I don't think I'm having many lineups today, but I won't have any without 2. I don't think.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to like kind of a lot of ugliness.
Which is good. We need that.
Yeah, Cleveland OKC. Not interested in Cleveland. And you know, playing OKC at a 13-point favorite with minutes risk and all this stuff, and they're not projecting all that great anyway. I'm probably not playing anybody for Cleveland.
No, I'm not going to take a shot with anybody from Cleveland, and I'm not going to play anybody from OKC, assuming that somehow someone isn't out or anything. I just don't see the reason to.
Okay. Memphis, Dallas, there's a really, you know, kind of, I wouldn't say sneaky, but whatever, kind of sneaky bit of news pending, I guess. Right now, it's so funny. Like I say this every slate, that Memphis always projects like shit. And every once in a while, they're okay, but they're back to projecting like shit today. And the one thing I will say is that Jonas Valanciunas does have a Q tag, and, you know, big dude, you know, what is it, knee soreness or something like that? Very possible he can get ruled out of this. And
especially if you don't necessarily need to play big. You know, maybe it gives him even more of an excuse where it doesn't like you need to match up with someone on the other side.
Yeah, and if so, then we can start. Then I think Jaren Jackson Jr. becomes a really strong play, and you could even maybe try Brandon Clark or something like that also. So that's definitely something to look for. In the absence of that, I don't like anybody on Memphis, which is kind of a shame, because on the Dallas side, I mean, I know you were talking about maybe getting some pivots off the Kristaps chalk, but I mean, it's he's going to be a very, very strong play. I mean, as long as Luka's out and he's, you know, now healthy, and he has to take over like so much of what Luka gave up. Like Luka, not only his points, but his rebounds and all this stuff. And I'm not relying on, you know, some of these other guys to pick up all that slack. I mean, I'm looking at some of these players, you know, it's going to be tough for him to not be in a good spot here. So he's going to be chalky for sure. And it's, you know, close enough spread where minutes risk is not as big of a deal. So it's going to be tough for me to kind of get away from if I only play 10 lineups. We'll see though. So I do like him. The other guys, so I'm going to go back to discussing Tim Hardaway Jr. because this is my thoughts. So like a couple of games ago, he was chalk, and I said, you know what? Tim Hardaway Jr. chalk is kind of dangerous. He shoots the ball a lot. He's got a lot of variance, and he was awful. And he was the only guy on Dallas that didn't get there when all those guys were supposed to get there. And so the other day, when he was, no one's going to own him. I'm like, you know what? For the same reason why he's dangerous as chalk, he's dangerous as a low-owned guy. He'll fire the ball up, and he might get hot. And he had a good game on a slate that it turns out you didn't get paid for it, because him at 7X was like the 50th best player on the slate, right? So it goes that way. So today, again, I just don't think I'm going to probably play him today. But if he's going to be really low-owned, maybe I'll take a shot. I don't know. So I like Kristaps. Between Hardaway and Brunson, I would presume Brunson would be a little bit the safer play because he's going to have the ball in his hands more often. The guy I have just kind of, people might have noticed that you're looking at my screen and you see, DeLon Wright here. It's not because I particularly love him all that much. He just happens to be a 5,200 guy I put in here to kind of save the lineup. So I didn't want you to think that I really, really liked him too much. It's just kind of a guy for me. So for me, I don't like really anybody from Memphis unless what's his name is out. And then I might go for some of the bigs. And I'm Dallas. I think Kristaps is obviously a really, really good play. And that's probably where I would go.
Yeah, Kristaps is solid. Makes sense. Like that it's at home too. They really have had to feature him like crazy. Um, the ownership I don't like on this giant slate, especially because I like some other chalkier plays. But I do certainly think it's hard just to not want to play Kristaps in a really good matchup. And I actually think that you can play any of the Memphis guys as tournament plays anyway. But I think that you do what you would like to for one of the bigs. For Valanciunas to be out, I think Brandon Clark and Jaren Jackson both make sense. Either of them are fine. I think I would actually give the edge to Clark, but I like Jackson as well. Just factoring in salary and maybe even, well, probably not ownership, but salary. Ja Morant, regardless, I think is definitely always in play. I just, I don't.
Yeah, but every time I see him play, and every time I play him, you know what happens? He makes a really, really great play, amazing assist, and say, okay, another tremendous play by Morant, and he gets like 20 fantasy points. You know, it's like so annoying. What happens to him when I'm not watching the game? I don't know.
I mean, against your Knicks, he just put up 44, and then he put up 38 the game before that, and 41 the game before that, and 35 the game before that. I mean, it's not like he's been.
No, I got you. I understand.
He just has upside, and it's the minutes really that you worry about with him. That when he gets up to those 30 minutes, like he was against Denver and Phoenix, like you're going to be looking at more. He's still the fourth leading scorer in the NBA in the fourth quarter this year, which is crazy.
Is that true?
Yes, you don't need to worry about if he's not putting up a huge game, but he's having a solid game. He'll get there in the fourth quarter. Yeah, he's been really, really good. So I don't mind it, but again, I just don't think it's the right slate. It's a game that looks tempting, but I just don't think it's the right slate for it personally.
You know, on a totally side note, you know, you talk about guys that score a lot in the fourth quarter. I would like to congratulate. You thought Devin Booker was snubbed for the All-Star game? Have you thought that someone got a break? I don't know. Very small news, but I want to congratulate LeBron James for winning the Western Conference Player of the Month of January. Dame Lillard, really? I mean, are you kidding?
How is that possible? That's nonsense.
I just kind of like took a double take. I saw it on Twitter last night. I went, huh? Wait, who? What? So I don't know. Anyway, so you mentioned fourth quarter points. That's why I thought of it.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we can move on.
Yeah, let's go to Denver, Utah.
Denver, Utah. This is just from a basketball perspective. This is a very tough spot for Denver. Interestingly, there are very few. Not very few. There are a couple of back-to-backs that the NBA kind of doesn't really allow. And one of them is when someone goes back-to-back, Utah, Denver, Denver, Utah. But they make an exception if, like, one of them is the home team. So, like, Denver itself plays at Denver and then taking it back-to-back to Utah. So they're allowing this one between these two teams. But it is a tough spot for Denver. Now, offsetting that is that Denver didn't really have to play more than a half yesterday. So I presume, I'm looking, I'm sure they rested all their guys, at least in the fourth quarter. All right, just kind of throw that out there. And with that said, on Denver, I don't think I'm going to play anybody. I'm not going to go back to Jokic again on back-to-back. This whole, all the reasons I just mentioned. It's a tough back-to-back, even though he didn't play as many minutes as normal. And I just think there are better centers relative to their price that I prefer to play. Now, Jokic is certainly one of the top-performing centers in the NBA over the last couple of weeks, to say the least. So it's a little annoying when you don't play him, and this happens all the time. He has 28 fantasy points in the first quarter, and you're like, uh-oh, and that does happen. But I don't think I'm going anywhere on Denver. And on Utah, so I have a ridiculous play on Utah. Anyway, I'll get to it. Rudy Gobert looks fine. He's also, Rudy Gobert as if these other guys I mentioned, like Ayton, become like really popular, I mean, you can play Gobert as a much lower owned $8,100 guy, and that could be actually kind of cool. So he's one place I would go. I'm not playing Donovan Mitchell. I'm just not doing it. I'm not playing Bojan. So the other day, when they announced that Conley was starting and he was 4,100, coming off of a ridiculously terrible game, I'm like, you know what? It was on the weekend, so it was kind of tough for me to come on and explain it to people, whatever. It was already like, whatever, past like I was out. But I thought that was like kind of, I don't want to say free money, but that was at 4,100 starting. I thought it was a really easy play. if he's going to continue to start and play max minutes, I know he was 3,700 recently and 4,100, whatever, and matchup isn't the greatest, but if you want a really, really low-owned guy, I mean, Mike Conley at 5,100, this is the ultimate not on this slate play, but like, for example, if I want to have 5,100, I want to slide some dude in instead of, say, DeLon Wright or something like that. I might try it. But clearly, my favorite play from this game is going to be Rudy Gobert as a low-owned pivot to some of these other 8K centers we talked about, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me because I think we don't know Jamal Murray back-to-back now. I know that he was fine. He only played 19 minutes. Michael Porter Jr. didn't play yesterday, so that could factor things. But without Jeremy Grant and without Juancho in there, I can't think that someone's not going to get a little bit of a boost here. So I'm looking – I mean, I'm not going to play P.J. Dozier, but he'll probably get some of those minutes. What happens if we hear Jamal Murray or Porter are sitting out? It does make things interesting for us. I think it makes Torrey Craig a strong play. Because of bodies, it might make Gary Harris a stronger play than you'd think. I know it sounds weird. I mean, look, he only played 21 minutes last night. That's because they were up by 74 points. I sort of like the exposure. I want to wait and see who ends up playing tonight. And Beasley's gone too. I just feel like everybody has more upside than they've had all year on Denver. And I might even take a gamble just in betting that somebody does something. I don't want to bet on Jokic on the back-to-back going against Gobert. But again, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I mean, he can stretch him out. He does some things valuable. If Murray is, in fact, playing, maybe Murray is actually a strong play that we're not considering. I need to wait and see on news on this one. And I think even the projections are off. And I know we may not get all the news by lock, but I'm really curious about Michael Porter, Jamal Murray, if we're going to get any late scratches and what, et cetera. And also, I'd be remiss not to mention that I think without Beasley, if there's no Porter Jr., and if Grant is out, Grant is out, it looks like. I just can't help but think Monte Morris, Will Barton should all get a little bit of an uptick. If Porter is out as well, I think I would give Will Barton the edge, just because Beasley takes away some of his shots with the second unit and doesn't allow him to really be him. Now, he was on his way to having a nice game last night. They just didn't need him anymore. Had played 2 beautiful games right before that. I could see him having a big game in this spot. So I don't know. I'm sort of in a wait-and-see mode to see who we actually think is playing because –
what about Michael Porter Jr.?
I like Michael Porter Jr. if he plays.
Okay.
We're going to have to wait. I mean, like, it's his back, and that's worrisome a little bit, like for a guy who's injury-prone, but I definitely think I would take some shots on him if he's playing. And then on Utah's side, I would agree that Conley is fine. I would dean him up at 10% if I was mass entering, and I would probably do the same with Gobert. I don't think I'm going to get too much more heavily involved against this defense that I really respect.
And are we are we overthinking it? Like, if there's none of these big guys in, are we just missing just playing Jokic 35 minutes? Like, I know it's a back-to-back, but he didn't play that much yesterday. I guess my other centers are just as good.
It's a tough back-to-back, and they're 9-point underdogs, which is just like, I mean, when has Denver been a 9-point underdog this year? Like, that almost makes me feel like someone else is sitting. Like, even Jokic. Like, maybe they're just punting. I don't know. We'll find out later in the day, hopefully. Yeah,
it's a tough spot for them for sure.
But that's still too big of a spread, don't you think? Like, 9 points? Why are they 9-point underdogs against a team? They're ahead of this team, aren't they? Or at least they're right near them in the West.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really followed the way lines get created nowadays, not years, but they used to really put a lot of emphasis on these back-to-backs.
This almost looks, but this almost, I mean, this even on the back-to-back, I would be thinking 5 or 6. This almost looks like a someone sitting kind of a thing, like Jamal Murray.
Okay, could be. All right, so Miami, LA, the last game here. Boy, oh boy. Jimmy Butler put up a freaking number.
You know what? And I deserve to be punished for that. I very briefly mentioned it on our show, by the way, but very briefly, that against Philly, he's going to try and show out a little bit. And, of course,
he sure did.
Puts up a monster game. I mean, he had to be so efficient to get to his 56, but he was incredibly efficient.
I was just so lucky that, I mean, I played 0 of them, and I was so lucky that they didn't run him back down for that fourth quarter.
Oh my God.
And then it would have been over. Like, it was hard enough to fade his 56 points. To fade the 70 that was coming was going to be impossible. So with that said, I don't particularly like him in this spot. Fine, I suppose, but I don't think I'm going to play him. And I don't think I'm going to play anybody else from Miami unless you get that normal guard variance. You know what I mean? That a couple of these guys are out and other guys get moved up or whatever it is. Just kind of look for that. But as it stands now, I don't really have much of an interest in Miami. A weird Clipper. Did you hear that there's a possibility that Harrell is on the trading block?
I've heard that for a couple of weeks actually, but I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I need to hear like some sort of concrete who this might happen or that might happen before I worry about him, I think.
Yeah, so the only thing I would try with that in mind is some wild, like, FanDuel Zubac play or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I really don't have too much interest.
Maybe not the right slate, but it's an interesting idea for sure.
Yeah. And I just don't play these guys when they're all there. You know, Kawhi and Paul George and Lou Williams. I'm just not getting any of them. I'm very curious. I have not even looking yet. I wonder what Lou Williams is on FanDuel. Did they put him under 5K yet?
Let me see real quick.
Because they hate him over there anyway.
They hate him over there, but it's 5.5. Yeah, not worth
Oh, okay. I was just wondering. They might have to. They would probably have to push me if 4,900 would be kind of rough.
Yeah. We're out of here in a minute. So let me go through some percentages real quick.
Go for it.
Heaviest ownership right now, I currently have Karl Anthony Towns, followed by Reggie Jackson, Culver, and then it drops down a little bit to Cantor, Drummond, Porzingis, Okogie, Trae Young. Just beneath them, D'Angelo Russell, if he's, we'll see about that one. Bruce Brown, Torrey Craig, Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, Vucevic. I'm going to have to try and differentiate a little bit. The last guys I named, that's the reason why I have them there. Sheets, final thoughts before we get out of here, because I do have to run in just a second.
Yeah, I'm gonna be spreading out some Minnesota ownership among these value guys, and hope I get those right. And I'll just kind of stand by what I said earlier. I mean, I like LeVert. I like not too into like any of the real big game stacks, except for that Atlanta game, which likewise you kind of have to get the Minnesota side of it right, but take a shot.
Sounds good, man. Hey, good luck to everybody. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards, and have a good one. We'll talk to you shortly.
Okay.